Hey, y'all, in today's podcast, we're going to give you 3 tips for overcoming imposter syndrome so you can finally take action on your online business idea.
Welcome to the Flip Lifestyle Podcast, where life always comes before work. We're your hosts, Shane and Jocelyn Sands.
We're a real family that figured out how to make our entire living online. And now we help other families do the same. Are you ready to flip your life? All right, let's get started. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Flipped Lifestyle Podcast. Super excited to be with you today to talk about a very important topic in online business, something that not only everyone has to get over in the beginning of their online business journey, but also every step along the way. It doesn't matter how successful you are. It doesn't matter how many things you accomplish. Imposter syndrome is always going to be a part of the entrepreneur journey. So what is imposter syndrome? Imposter syndrome is that little voice in the back of your head that says, like, who are you to teach this really, right? Who are you? Who are you? Why are you trying to do this? Or you're not good enough, or someone else is better than you, and you should just step out of the way. You should get out of the way. You're an imposter. You haven't even got it all figured out, and you're trying to help other people figure it out too. That makes absolutely no sense. Why are you doing that, right? And that voice in the back of our heads always shows up to try to stop us from taking the next step in our journey. Now, when we started out in our online business journey, Jocelyn and I were still working in public schools. I was a social studies teacher, I was a football coach, and Jocelyn was an elementary school librarian. Now, when we started our first companies, selling lesson plans to librarians and selling playbooks to football coaches, we weren't exactly the world's foremost authorities on all of those topics. Jocelyn had only been a librarian for like 3 years. She was on her second school, and it wasn't like and we were in our early 30s. It wasn't like we were, experts and people were trying to get us up on stage to speak about stuff that we were doing in our classrooms. And I was a football coach, but I wasn't Nick Saban. I wasn't, Bill Belichick. I wasn't one of these famous football coaches that was winning Super Bowls. In fact, I was a terrible football coach for the first part of my actual journey. I was an assistant coach at a couple really successful programs. But when I got hired to be a head coach for the first time, I was 0-10 in my first season, and I was 2-8 in my second season. So I went 2 years, my first 2 years as an actual football coach who got to call plays and make all the decisions. I was like 2-18, right? So that's not exactly inspiring confidence in your football program. But over the next couple of years, I was better as a head coach. I got to be a defensive coordinator, and I got better as a defensive coach. I got better as an on-field coach, and we started winning games. First, it was 3-7, then maybe 5-5, and then we had our first winning season in years at the school I was at. And finally, we're 8-2, and we're going to the playoffs. So we got better and better, and I learned from all those 0-10 mistakes and got to be a pretty good football coach. But still wasn't winning state championships. Still wasn't going out and being, there weren't people beating down my door to hire me to lead their program. So when we started creating these products and I said, hey, I'm going to make a playbook, imposter syndrome hit me in the face as hard as it could ever hit anybody. Because I was like, why would anyone buy this playbook from me? I've never won a state championship. I've never been a college head football coach like all these people who are selling these other playbooks. And that imposter syndrome really started to creep in. Now, I knew my defense. I knew all the lessons that I had learned over the past 9 or 10 years of coaching football. So I knew all the information. I had all of the information, all the ability that I needed to go out and sell this playbook, right? But I just had this imposter syndrome creeping in. I said, who is going to listen to me? But then I realized, I started looking back at my journey, and I started looking at all the programs I'd been a part of, and I said, well, why would someone listen to me? Why would they listen to me instead of the big dogs, instead of all these famous people? Well, when I was at that little school going 0-10, 2-8, we had some problems. We had zero talent. We had big, heavy set, I'm going to be politically correct about it, linemen. They were big dudes. They were really big dudes. Couldn't move a lick. Couldn't go left. They could go left or right about 1.5 feet, and then they were done. They were gassed. They were out of commission, right? And we didn't have a lot of speed and skill on the football team. So we had to figure out ways to win with those kind of kids. And I remembered back to the beginning of my journey how sad and depressed I was every single Friday night. But then I remembered how good it felt when we were like 5-5. I was like, wow, we won, we lost, but some Friday nights I went home happy and some Friday nights I went home sad, but it was pretty good. Then we started having winning seasons. And I remember when we crossed that threshold and I was like, man, we go home on Friday night happy more times than we don't. Right. And then I started thinking about people who were trying to get to that situation. Half the teams every year have losing records. So half the coaches out there that are getting beat by the other half of the coaches are going home unhappy more Friday nights than they are going home happy. And they're really sad and it's really depressing and they're starting to doubt themselves. And I was like, man, if I could just help those people get to 6 wins, to where they're 6-4, they can go home happy more nights than not. They can have more Saturday mornings with their kids that are happy than depressing. Then that's a win. That's a huge win. And actually, I'm better suited to lead that person for the next part of their journey. Maybe I can't tell them how to be a college football coach and win the national championship. Maybe I can't do that, right? But you know what Nick Saban at Alabama can't do? He can't tell them how to win with those kids. All of his playbooks are designed for 6'5", 300-pound monsters that can run faster than I could ever sprint in my prime, right? So he's not well suited to help these people go from 0-10 to 5-5 or 4-6 to 6-4, right? And I started realizing I was 1 or 2 chapters ahead of all the people that I could serve. And that helped me realize if I'm trying to be Nick Saban, if I'm trying to be Bill Belichick, then I am an imposter. But I'm not an imposter if I'm helping people behind me in the journey take the next step in their journey. Right? Jocelyn had a very similar situation. Jocelyn was an elementary school librarian. She'd only been a librarian for about 3 years. And when she started making these library lesson plans, started blogging about life in the library, there was a little bit of imposter syndrome. And she started saying things like, well, why would anyone buy lesson plans from me? Wouldn't they buy them from the textbook company? Because that's who it was. Or wouldn't some, 40-year veteran of the library, right? So this person that was actually shelving, books back when the Gutenberg press was going on or whatever. She's out there. These people are the ones that should make these lesson plans. But as she looked online for lesson plans, the textbook companies weren't making them. And as she looked to all these other people who were veterans and leaders in the library world, they weren't doing it either. So she was the one who had the, I guess you would say, motivation to go out and make the thing. And if nobody else was going to do it, why not her, right? So Jocelyn overcomes imposter syndrome and she makes library lesson plans. And she doesn't just start elementarylibrarian.com, right? She doesn't just become a elementary librarian. She literally becomes the elementary librarian. And she captures the entire market share, the biggest market share of all the elementary librarian resources out there. And I didn't try to become Nick Saban. I tried to teach the lessons I'd learned to the people who were behind me in the journey. And guess what? Sold thousands of dollars in playbooks because my story related to those coaches more than the quote unquote expert that I was intimidated by. And Jocelyn's lesson plans that she actually created were extremely more competitive and better than all the stuff that never got created by all the people that quote unquote should have been doing it, right? And that's what the first part of this is all about is, it's not about who are you, who am I to do this? Overcoming imposter syndrome starts with, why not me, right? And who can I serve? So you need to stop asking that wrong question, who am I? Who am I to do this? You need to start asking the right questions, why not me? And I need to go out and I need to serve these people because nobody else is doing it the way that I can do it, okay? Another thing that we really struggle with in the beginning is what we know. We think we have to know everything about a topic, and that creates some kind of imposter syndrome, right? But you don't. You just have to know a little bit more than the person that's behind you. So I'm going to give you 3 tips really quick for overcoming imposter syndrome. That's how Jocelyn and I did it. We started with someone just put in the comments, a 4th grader looks like a god to a 1st grader. And that's so true. Like, it doesn't matter like who you are. And one of the biggest things you have to remember too is people want to relate to you. They don't really care what you know. They want to relate to you. They want to say, hey, that person's walked in my shoes. That person understands what I'm going through. And they want to connect with you as well, right? Like, people connect with me and Jocelyn because we have a funny accent or because of the way we do things, right? And the way you do things will be different than the way other people does things. Look, there's online business people out there like Gary Vaynerchuk that's going to come out. He's going to work 70 hours a week and he's going to mother F you up and down and he's going to cuss you and all these things, right? And like, that's his personality, right? But you know what? That's not how I'm going to do things. That's not how Jocelyn's going to do things. That's not how and that personality is probably why you listen to the Flip Lifestyle podcast, probably why you join the Flip Your Life community. It's to be around the people and the personalities that you like. So don't discount your personality as a part of that. Like, if you only look at your knowledge base, well, yeah, you're going to suffer from imposter syndrome, right? But if you only look at you compared to what someone else knows, you're going to cause some imposter syndrome. But remember, people relate to people. They don't relate to information. People don't relate to your perfect program and plan. They relate to you and how accessible you are to help them implement their plans. That's going to help you overcome some imposter syndrome. All right, so let's circle back around here. I'm going to do 3 tips. I'm going to do 3 tips to help you overcome imposter syndrome if that's holding you back right now. You don't have to be the expert. You really just have to be a little bit ahead. Now, I want to caution you on this part right here. You do have to be ahead enough, right? If I learn literally one thing about something, if I learn, hey, if you want to have an online business, you need an email list, and then I go try to be a guru about email marketing and online business, you're eventually going to be a fraud. Not just an imposter, right? But if you have achieved some results and you have helped some other people achieve results, then you are more than qualified to go out and teach whatever it is in your space. When Jocelyn and I first started in Flip Lifestyle, or on our online business, we didn't even think about going out and teaching anybody anything else. We were just elementary librarian. We were just ushistoryteachers.com. We were just football coaching playbooks. Like, that's all we were, right? But then a friend of Jocelyn's said, hey, that's pretty cool. Could you show me how to do that? I'd love to do that. Can I do that? Jocelyn walks through it with her, meets with her, helps her create some things, helps her get it online. And lo and behold, she makes some money doing that, right? So the process worked for them just like that it did for us. And that's usually a clue that you should put imposter syndrome behind you. If someone else is asking you about something or you find yourself explaining things to other people, the people in your immediate area, in your immediate circle, they're starting to view you as an expert. They're viewing you as far enough ahead in the journey to start teaching them. That should evaporate all of that imposter syndrome. There's a member of the Flip Your Life community. I posted something the other day about investing in the stock market. I'm tiptoeing into the stock market. I have no clue what I'm doing, but I'm trying to learn, right? And the only way I learn is by doing. So I'm in the stock market. I'm putting money in the stock market. And he reached out to me and we were talking because his business is going to be about the stock market stuff. And we were talking back and forth and I was asking him questions and I was like, dude, why are you not selling this? Like this, I've learned more from you in the 15 minutes we've been talking than I learned in the first 15 days of me researching Google on how to do all this nonsense. And he was like, I know. And I'm like, no, you don't know. You don't get it. Like, you don't have to be Warren Buffett. You don't have to be some giant investor. I would pay you today to teach me what you're teaching me. You just have to go do it, right? So realize where you actually are in the journey. Have you gotten some results? Have you helped some other people? Are people asking you about that? If that's true, then forget about all the people ahead of you. The people behind you are begging you to sell them something and begging you to be their leader. You are not an imposter. The second somebody asks you a question, you're for real. People need you, and you need to take action and go do that. Okay, so tip number one, remember, you don't have to be the biggest expert in the world. You just have to be one chapter ahead. All right, tip number two for overcoming imposter syndrome. Remember, you don't need credentials. You just have to be able to deliver, right? If you can deliver the result, you don't need any kind of credentials. You don't need a PhD. You don't need a certification. Listen, I got thousands of people asking me for business advice every week. You know what I'm not? I'm not an MBA. I don't have a degree in business. I have a degree in history and political science. Right? But you know what I have done? I have gotten results, and I've helped other people get results, and I can do the job, and I can tell you how to do the job, and then you can do the job, and then you can get results. Right? So you got to remember that. We get so intimidated sometimes by the letters after people's names or what the world tells us we should have when it comes to certifications and credentials and things like that. Now, I'm not talking about being a doctor. Okay? Imposter syndrome for doctors is real. You can't do surgery if you ain't been to medical school. So don't go after me on that one, right? But like I'm talking about credentials, these made up certifications that we all see all the time. Like, I've got to be able to do this to do math, and I got to be able to do this to do this, and I got to be able to do this to do that. You don't need any of those credentials or anything that the world tells you need if you can actually deliver results. The story I always tell about this particular topic is the story of the desert and the flat tire. Now, some of you may have heard this before, but you're about to hear it again. So if you're out in the middle of Death Valley and you're in the desert, right, and you forgot all your water and you weren't prepared and you didn't do what you were supposed to do, and you're halfway through Death Valley and there's no way you can walk in or out of Death Valley, you're just stuck. You got a flat tire and you're done. You're right there. You forgot your spare, and that's it. Okay. And you're sitting there and it's getting hotter and you're getting thirstier and you're dreaming about getting deader because you ain't gonna make it out of Death Valley alive because you're gonna die out here because you weren't prepared and you had a flat tire, right? And then all of a sudden, an old pickup truck drives up, okay? Stops right beside you, and there's an old boy in the pickup truck, and he looks over at you and goes, "Hey, you got a flat tire, don't you?" And you say, "Yes, I do. I'm stuck in Death Valley, and this is not going to end well. Can you help me?" And he says, "Well, yeah, sure I can. And I don't have a chair that you can sit in. I took my chair out for some reason, and you can't get in my car. But I can change your tire. That solution won't work. You can't get in with me. I don't pick up hitchhikers. I don't trust you. But I'll help you change your tire. And it just so happens I have the tire in the back seat that's perfect for your car. There's no room for you in the back seat. We can't do that. But I'll change your tire for you. Okay." In that situation, you're not going to stop that guy and say, "Well, that's great. You've got the tire that I need. You're going to help me change the tire. I don't know how to change a tire. I don't have the tools to change a tire. But are you a Goodyear certified mechanic? Are you certified by the National Organization of Tire Changing People? Are you certified? No, you're not going to do that. That dude has a solution to your problem. Right now, a very serious problem. In fact, you will go to your wallet and you will hand him your credit cards and all of your cash and everything you got and say, "Here, take this. I'll sort it out later. I'll cancel them all. You go buy whatever you want for right now. Please change my tire." You're not going to ask them for their fancy certification or their work history or anything like that. If they can solve your problem and if they can deliver the solution, you're going to go with that person, right? It's the same thing with your online business. You don't have to have any fancy certifications or anything like that. Can you solve the problem? I wasn't some certified football coach, but I could help you win more games on Friday nights. Jocelyn was an elementary librarian. That's good. But she created all these plans. And here's what's funny. We sold that company to another company, and they had no librarians working for them. They had nobody in school systems doing that. This was a nameless, faceless organization that bought elementarylibrarian.com, and they still sold lesson plans into those libraries. Nobody cared. What they cared about was, do the lesson plans solve my problem? So remember that. You don't have to have any fancy credentials or anything like that. You just have to be able to solve the problem. You got to be able to deliver the solution for your customer. And if you can do that, you can do an online business, all right? So let's review real quick. Tip number one was you don't have to be the expert. You don't have to know everything in the world. You just have to be ahead enough to help the people behind you. Number two, you don't need any credentials. You just need to be able to deliver the solution. If you can do that, you're awesome. All right. And number three, my number one tip for overcoming imposter syndrome is to stop looking at your competition. Stop looking at your competition. I know a lot of gurus and business experts will say, let's do a competitor analysis and let's do all this and let's see what they're doing and let's do it better than them and let's do this and let's do that. But especially in the beginning, you need to stop looking at your competition. Okay. Now here's why. Number one, you're always going to see something they can do that you can't do. And you know what's funny? If they were looking at you, they would see you doing things that they can't do either, right? They would see your personality and think, I can't match that personality. They would see how you teach the process, and they would say, I can't teach the process that way, right? The best thing you can do in the very beginning of your journey is to stop looking at other websites, stop looking how anybody else does it, stop looking at any other programs, and you do you. Stay laser focused. Put the blinders on and quit thinking about how good everybody else is and start focusing on what's good about you. When Jocelyn and I first started out, we're getting ready to launch the Flipped Lifestyle podcast. We were really nervous because we had looked at all the other podcasts. We had listened to other podcasts. We had met a lot of these people out at live events and things like that. And we always looked at all the things they did really, really well. And we became intimidated, right? And we didn't look at the things that people would like about us. In fact, we heard other people and we thought, wow, listen to their accent. They sound so smart. They sound like they're not from the middle of Kentucky, right? Like people are going to judge us. We're never going to be able to stack up to that. And we finally just had to tune it all out. We had to stop listening to other podcasts, stop listening to anybody else. And we said, you know what? Let's do what we do best. And we'll attract the people that like that over anybody else. And we'll stop comparing ourselves, stop doing it in any other way. We don't want to compete in the beginning. We want to create. The more competing you're doing and the more you're evaluating everybody else and the more you're comparing yourself to all these other people in your niche, right? The more you're going to get in your head and you're going to freeze and you're going to get paralyzed, and imposter syndrome is going to hold you back from becoming their competitor because they're going to intimidate you out of the game, right? And the big thing you have to remember with everybody else out there is, number one, 99% of people that will find you will probably never find your competitor, right? Most people search for something in Google, search for something on, Apple Podcast. They find the first thing that looks good and they listen to it and they stick with it, right? They're not going to go out there and put all 5 podcasts beside each other, listen to each one, take detailed notes, and do a comparison of who they're actually going to follow. That's not what it is. The first person I ever followed online was Pat Flynn, not because he was so smart or so spectacular. It's because his website, he had a picture of his son and him holding his kid. And his son and my son are the same age. That's the only reason that we listened to the Smart Passive Income podcast in the beginning, right? So remember, if you're obsessing over your competition in your niche, nobody else is. Your customers aren't. They may never know about this other person that you think is your competitor and you think is so much better than you, which they're probably not. And you're letting that imposter syndrome overwhelm you and keep you out of the market when really nobody else is even going to find them anyway, right? We get these stories in our head that everybody knows about everything because we know about everybody in our space, but most people don't. So don't compete. Don't compete. You need to unsubscribe from every podcast in your niche. You need to unsubscribe from all the YouTube channels, and you need to, anybody that you feel like, oh, how am I ever going to be as good as them? You need to get them out of your face. You need to get them out of your feeds, and you need to stop following them today. Okay. All right, so let's go back. 3 tips for overcoming imposter syndrome. If you do this today, I know if imposter syndrome has held you back, if imposter syndrome is keeping you from the next step, this is going to eliminate that. This is going to get it out of your way so that you can remove this obstacle and you can move forward in your online business. All right, number 1, remember, you don't have to be the expert. Stop trying to be the expert. Be the expert that the people behind you need, right? Start looking at their needs and who they actually relate to, and become that person instead. Don't look at the people ahead of you. Look at the people behind you, and that'll get the imposter syndrome out of the way. Number 2, you don't have to be credentialed. You just have to be able to deliver the solution. If you can deliver the solution and there is no legal requirement for you to have the credential, you can teach what you teach online. And number 3, stop comparing yourself to the competition. You are not actually in competition with anybody except yourself. And every time you don't launch or you don't take the next step, imposter syndrome has defeated you. You have defeated yourself, and you're not letting the competitors do it as well. Okay? All right. Now, last thing I want to say about imposter syndrome before we wrap up today's podcast. Imposter syndrome is a really interesting obstacle. It's a really interesting mindset issue. You know, we've coached thousands of people in the Flip Your Life community. We have thousands of people that listen to the Flip Lifestyle podcast. And, you would think after doing this for years and years and years, imposter syndrome, I wrote the tips. Of course it works for me, right? But here's what we've learned about imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is a part of the DNA of entrepreneurship. There's always a bigger fish. There's always hundreds of people in a space. There's always dozens of people above you and dozens of people behind you. And every time you move up the ladder of success, every single rung, imposter syndrome comes back. Every single time. Whenever you do a new challenge, whenever you launch a new product, whenever you do a new podcast, every time you do something new in your business, imposter syndrome is going to come back. And the faster that you can embrace this imposter syndrome thing, it's a part of your DNA. It's a part of your journey. It's something. It's like someone that's it's like an annoying fly that won't go away. But it's like, I'm done with it. I'm finished. I'm not going to think about it anymore, because you anticipate it and you welcome it back. Like, hey, old friend, so you're the imposter syndrome for this part of my journey, right? Let me just overcome you real quick, and I'm going to get moving, and I'm going to push forward, and I'm going to do it anyway, right? You can't beat imposter syndrome. You can't get rid of it forever. You can overcome it in the moment at this stage of your journey. Take the next step. And then when it comes back, you beat it again. And you just look at it again, and you say, all right, how are you trying to get me? Oh, you're saying my competition's better this time. Well, guess what? I'm not going to look at the competition. So I beat it for this rung of my journey, and I move on to the next step. You come back and say, ooh, that person's got a PhD in 1, 2, 3. Well, guess what? I'm teaching it ABC. I don't even care about your PhD. And you move forward anyway, and you have all these tools in your toolbox just ready to go. When imposter syndrome shows up, you're ready to kick its butt. You're ready to get out of the way, and you're ready to move forward in your own business. Now, there's 3 big places where imposter syndrome will stop you if you're not careful. Number 1 is when you're about to launch, when you're about to try your idea, when you're about to do the idea and you're about to take it to the next level. Imposter syndrome kicks in. It won't even let you take action on that place. The next thing is when you finally take action on your idea and you finally go out and build your product, or you're ready to launch, imposter syndrome comes back and it stops you from launching. And then every time you're trying to bust through a plateau, imposter syndrome is going to show back up. And we're always going to hit plateaus all the time. So you've got to beat it in the beginning. All right. It's like a bully. You punch it in the nose the first time it shows up, and it gets easier and easier to chase off when it shows up in the future. All right, guys, that is all the time I have for today's Flip Lifestyle podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Listen, if we're struggling with imposter syndrome and you have punched it in the face and you are ready to overcome it and move forward and finally take action on your online business idea, we have made a free course available for you over at fliplifestyle.com/idea. This training is designed for you to go in, get your idea, get it off the ground, turn it into a product that you can sell online and turn into a membership community. So if you'd like to get a hold of that free training, go to flippedlifestyle.com/idea, put your name and email in, and we will get you access to that free training today so that you can take your next step in your online business journey. That is all the time I've got for today, guys. Thank you so much for listening in. Until next time, get out there, take action, do whatever it takes to flip your life. We'll see you then.